which is kind of what you'd expect from beginning players, I suppose, but it's not in a bad way. Like, these are legitimate strategies and builds these players are coming up with, and it's very creative. Over here on the right side, we've got FXB Draz. Over on the left, Horus the Holy. Okay, so let me take a quick look at the standings. Now, I think Draz and Horus, okay, this is a cool match, are both, they both won in round 1, right? So we are going to be in a position where there can't be 2 3-0s. Maybe if you math it all out, there couldn't be 2 3-0s. Anyways, listen. That's probably the case. But regardless, one of these players is no longer going to be in the comfortable 2-0 position. And 2-0 is the spot to be, right? Because if you win here, even if you lose round 3, you might end up tying or competing in a tiebreaker or something like that to qualify into intermediate. You know, whereas if you lose here, it's like, okay, you're still in the running, but now you have to win round 3. So this is a very important victory in the set. Yeah, when you're behind, you need to take risks, as Mocha says in the chat. Very wise words. That is very true for any RTS game. All right, we got 8 farm doubles from both sides. Draz going for that mill, and it makes sense, you know. Like, you might as well. If you're in a position where you're probably gonna lose, why not? Why not do something crazy? Why not sell everything you got, build double Fox over in the corner, and see what happens, man? Sometimes it works. What was gonna happen if you didn't do that? Then you're gonna lose anyways, right? Because you were behind. But risks can come in all shapes and sizes, you know. It could be tech, it could be army size, it could be economy, it could be tactics, right? Like trying to do something crazy, like fly your falcons over next to a ledge to try to poke in. It's like, well, I might lose those falcons, but I might kill a couple pigs for free. Alright, so we have a proper macro game on our hands. So far, I like this opening build a little bit better for Draz, but Horus is totally fine as well. Getting into some toads. And again, we are on the PTR here, where we've got a little bit of toad love. They are faster. I don't think... I gotta review the patch notes. But I don't think anything else changed with the toads. I want to see, actually, before I spread misinformation. I think it was just the speed up, but that's actually a huge change. Yeah, it was just the speed up for the toad. Okay. I was making sure it wasn't like anything with the HP. But that's an enormous change. I mean, look at these toads, man. They're zoomers. And for a unit who's a kamikaze unit, right? Like a unit who's trying to connect in, blow up the opponent. I mean, speed is everything. The fast toads could make the difference between, you know, two or three of your 6 toads connecting. Now all of a sudden 4 or 5 of your 6 toads are connecting. And Horus looks like he's posturing for some aggression here. Good scouting for both sides. Both players are kind of looking, all right, how many farms you have? Let me make sure I've got about the same amount. Let me check around for anything like tier 3. Did you sell off any tier 1 for some, you know, a big tier 2 explosion? But here comes Horus. He's moving in. Draz is not quite in the right position. Going to start moving in forward now. Horus keeping his toads in the back and just slams them into that entire army. Was it cost effective? I'm not sure, but it was really cool to watch. Dude, I love toads. And big toad explosions, the Chad toads, as I call them. They are awesome. My favorite thing, you want to make me happy with the replay submission? Submit a game where you take out grist mills with toads. Like that's what I want to see. That's the kind of content we're looking for on the feast. Alright, good scout here from Horus. Sees that Draz is trying to get into the wolf. Meanwhile, Draz hasn't scouted in a little while. Going to come in. But this phase of the game, it actually gets difficult to scout. It's no longer really straightforward. You kind of got to find a way to sneak in, you know, like scout like that or something. Because otherwise the enemy army will just kill your commander. All right, let's see. Toadsma goes. Horus trying to look on him, but not getting... Kind of getting some awkward pathing with the Toads. Finally getting the connections they were looking for, but Draz's skunks just annihilate everything. I think that was a little bit of a mishandling there from Horus, and good abuse of this terrain from Draz. You know, positioning his skunks like over here on the other side of that double high ground. Kind of confused the AI of Horus's units a little bit. You know, some were trying to split off this way, some were trying to go around that way. Horus was trying to correct, like, no, Toads, come in this way and hit those skunks. But by that time, you know, all the skunk gas had already basically deleted the army for Horus there. And now all of a sudden, Draz is in a game-winning position. He's got the Wolf out. He's working on the Owls. But Horus is trying to batten down the hatches here, is aware that the Tier 3 is out and about, and is trying to get into some hefty numbers of Tier 2 here. Going for 6 Falcons to try to deal with this, and the double skunk. Now, did Horus scout the Owl as well? Okay, yes, that makes sense. Yeah, once you have that double skunk up, you can kind of negate the mice pretty effectively until the Owls just continue to grow in numbers. Hey man, that's what happens when you got a team, when you're playing with people. You know, Tooth and Tail is not a very mechanically demanding game, so you know, in Draz's position, when you got a guy like Trumpet, you know, helping you out, Trumpet is definitely one of the top Tooth and Tail players at the moment. You know, definitely in like the top 8 or something at the very least, and you got a guy like that who's helping you out, and you know, maybe playing some skirmish games with you, maybe giving you the rundown on the meta. I mean, it can make a big difference. I mean, now there is part of it that is just experience, right? That you can't really get past. You know, nobody can practice those guitar scales for you. You know what I mean? You gotta get that muscle memory in on your own. So there are little things like timing windows and when to build what that takes experience, like some of that deeper nuance. But this is a solid comp that Draz got put together. And let's see what Horus can do about it. You know, got the 6 Falcons in the air, got these ferrets to kind of poke and prod in between the direct engagements, and so far these ferrets or these Falcons rather, are doing a pretty good job of starting to wean down this Tier 2 town of the opponent. Now, Horus needs to be careful. A lot of his Tier 2 is getting low. I honestly wouldn't hate to see a retreat. Just for the sake of keeping these units alive and healing them up, maybe putting them in some water real quick. And yeah, Horus like overstayed his welcome. I feel like just by like 5 or 10 seconds, like not by a very long time. You know, that initial engagement wasn't terrible, but left Horus with a lot of damage Tier 2. And now Draz is just busting through, kind of smelled the blood in the water, and that is going to be match number 1 here. For Draz. Horus desperately trying to get out whatever they can, but Draz has simply done too much damage at this point. Nice bringing that Owl back at just a little bit of HP there. the Trumpet gang is here. Alright. Yeah, Horus trying to make something happen, you know, rallying what he can, maybe thinking about a way to get to that back door. But Draz is just gonna stomp on through and take the match. Alright, but Horus can definitely still do this. You know, maybe Horus has got a little bit of the download now, kind of understands how Draz wants to play. Now, does Draz change it up is the question. And again, that really comes down to personal preference. I feel like there's merit in both methodologies when it comes to either keeping with the same deck you've practiced a lot or having a few in the bank. But up top, fresh off victory, you've got Draz rocking that same composition. And in the bottom, Horus the Holy with a very poke-centric comp coming out from him in the deck selection. I love it, man. I love... There's a place in my heart for this kind of thing that Horus is trying to do. which is hilarious because it's like when it's working, it's just one of the most annoying things to play against. But you know, it's a meme. Well, maybe saying it's a meme is too strong. It's one-dimensional in a way, right? Where when you have a composition like what Draz is running, you know, you can kind of, I mean, the problem, no deck is perfect. You know, keep that in mind too. There are certain players who search for the holy grail, as I call it, of deck composition that can do good in all situations. And there are some things that are pretty close. You know, but every deck has its ups and downs. And I think Draz's deck has a very powerful late game, but does waver a little bit in the early game, right? Like Squirrel Skunk, you know, for example, just Mass Lizard, right? I feel like Mass Lizard would give Draz's deck a pretty hard time. And Horus does have that capability, but Horus is really relying on creating a strong defensive position with the turrets, with the balloons, to be able to poke in with the ferrets, you know, eventually get to the fox, and it's kind of got the lizard boar in there as just the anchors for the composition, right? Like, you can just build nothing but lizards. I mean, that's totally viable. There's some ways that it can get hard countered, you know, like things like toads and barbed wire and chameleons and the like, but it is definitely a composition all on its own. And the boar is a good icing on that cake. And Horus looks to really want to be aggressive this round. Kind of interesting, as I say that, runs back and throws down a turret at home. But I think what Horus needs to do is either look for these fights where, yeah, he's found some squirrels out in the open. I think he actually could have stayed a little bit longer there. Draz is again trying to get up to this double skunk comp. But I think maybe what Horus could have shot for here in the early game was to try to take like this mill and start setting up some turrets, because Draz actually is kind of feigning some strength right now as he's building up these skunks. Like, Draz was very, very exposed, sitting on just a few tier 1 Warrens as he was trying to get up to the tier 2, but now that risk has gotten to the reward side of it, where these 4 skunks are out and about, and again, you know, you just got to think about the skunks in this position against the lizards as a large HP pool. You know, like, yeah, the gas is awesome and it helps. Well, I guess once you get up to like 4 skunks too, I mean, you're putting so much gas down everywhere. I guess maybe the argument that the lizards are so fast, they're not in the gas for very long, is a little bit null and void. But Horus here actually, with the tier 3, gonna try to go for what looks to be mainly like a 1 base all in, trying to get up to boar and fox at the same time. Good run around here from Horus right when Draz started moving out. Comes in with these lizards, trying to get as much damage done as possible. Unfortunately, is going to lose all these lizards here. Doesn't quite have the raw numbers to contest this up and running or directly. But you know what? This comp that Horus is putting together, this boar fox, Horus is kind of like taking a playbook from play out of Draz's book here, right? Like getting up to this tier 3, and might be putting together a stronger composition. Draz does have some snakes going on though. Hasn't quite seen the tier 3, so it's kind of like, why do you want snakes right now? But at the same time, I mean, it's pretty easy to deduce that the tier 3 is on the way, right? Like you see, all right, they're on 1 base. They're turtled up behind a bunch of turrets. Like, what else would they be doing than trying to get out that tier 3? And the snake could do pretty nicely against the boar. Still going to take some focus fire, some decent micro from Draz to pull that off, and not just let the snakes attack like the tier 1. But the fox can do nice against the snakes, and this balloon here is doing pretty decent for the boar. So Draz already was kind of prepared for this boar fox thing, again, after seeing all the turrets from Horus, but can Horus just bust through here? This boar is getting poisoned, but is still tanking on the front. Really needs to knock out the snakes, though. Oh, did his commander go down? Oh, the commander went down. Yeah, that always happens, man. Oh, picks off that skunk. And if Horus can just keep this snake count down, maybe Horus has a decent shot here. Gonna try to come in, realizes behind on the economy. Ooh, one stack is not gonna be enough to kill the fox. Horus, so needs to pay attention to this macro here. Needs to sell off that boar warren. No, actually he's gonna sell some of the other warrens for the boar. Needs to consider investing into some farms, and has got to really get the money out of this fox here. Needs to just constantly be poking. It is really difficult when you're having to poke uphill against snakes, though, like this. Like, your commander can just die so easily. And there it is, commander death. But before that happened, Horus was able to get the commander, or get the fox back safely at home. Didn't quite pick off a snake, though. And now all these snakes coming out from Draz, I think what Horus really needs is more lizards here. You know, this second boar is not exactly what the doctor ordered. You know, these snakes are going to do great against the boar. So, honestly, I feel like if Horus would have sold the boar, built lizards, could maybe be in a game-winning position. But right now, Draz has exactly what he needs to deal with this. And if Horus tries to go get that bacon, you know, these snakes are just going to kill this fox. I mean, that is a dead fox. And that high ground, like, Draz is really playing smart here. Keeping his units up on that high ground, realizing this fox has no vision. And realizing it's difficult to get the commander up there to see, but, oh man, Horus really can't let these balloons go up. This is starting to look better and better for Draz. You know, Draz is showing us some really good decision-making as far as what units to keep, what units to sell. All right, my opponents have these units. I need those, right? Got up that extra economy pretty quickly. Gonna move out here. And Horus still can't quite get any kills on these tier 2s. You know, all these fox shots are really just not doing anything. These snakes regenerate pretty quickly in their own territory. This high ground here, like, Draz is doing such a good job of keeping everything up there. Yeah, and even just trying to run up there with the snakes, with the balloons, I mean, Horus just dies immediately. So Horus kind of needs to go back to the drawing board as far as what composition is going to work. Now, Horus still has plenty of economic options here, can keep expanding. This game isn't over yet, but the problem is that the longer Horus waits, the closer that Draz is going to get to this owl composition. And, you know, this fox has just really not gotten any value from this nice defensive posturing that Draz has been doing. Now, this could be a crazy epic long game. If Horus can, you know, maybe like sell off the boar, get a bunch more lizards, get a third base, and build a wall of turrets. You know, Horus has turret balloon, and there is a critical mass of turrets where, you know, you can kill all the mice and not lose anything. But, you know, that would, I mean, Horus would have to be doing, like, all those things right now. Horus can't get in there and see what Draz is really up to. And this is just starting to look better and better for Draz. You know, I think Horus, as much as I hate to keep harking on, like, a similar point, I think Horus just made the wrong call when he was faced with the decision to either build another boar or build a bunch of lizards. I think the right answer there was build the lizards, right? Because at that point, all Draz really had was like a couple squirrels and the snakes. And lizards will just mow over snakes, no problem. But these snakes are exactly what Draz needs to combat the boar fox, right? And it's just buying him time, and now he's getting up to these owls. And Horus can kind of build a bunch of defense and actually split this map pretty favorably. But we need to see some real reworks happening very, very fast from Horus. You know, needs to sell off like all the lizards, build the turrets, gotta have the balloons too, to keep the snakes back from just poisoning down the turrets. Maybe start building into some ferrets. Just to have some poke. Maybe like a second boar. Yeah, I think you get rid of the lizards, you eco up super hard, you build a bunch of... Well, do you even really need a bunch of turrets if you have the boar? Maybe you get the second boar instead, and some balloons. I actually don't hate keeping the fox, because after the mice get spent, you know, maybe the fox can get in there and poke down some tier 2s and stuff. But the time for lizards is over. Like there was that point where Horus could have gone that way, but these lizards are just going to trade very, very terribly with the owl, and will eventually allow Draz to get more and more value. One thing Draz should be doing a little bit more is spending these mice. You know, once you get up to max mice, just go ahead, throw them in there. You know, every little thing really counts. I mean, maybe Draz is hesitant to do that out of fear of a counterattack. You know, when I don't have the mice anymore, I'm left open a little bit. But honestly, I think Draz is pretty solid. You know, with so many snakes and with the skunk here. Yeah, I think what you got to do here in Horus's position is get rid of the lizards, get like another boar, get a bunch of balloons. Like, I think 2 boars is just basically enough to deal with mice, right? Because even if you get a whole bunch of mice, I think the DPS of 2 boars would just kill them all before they can really connect. And then you gotta use the ferrets to like try to look around for some value. But these balloons are a big problem for Horus, because these balloons just shut down the ferrets and the fox, which is really the avenue for Horus to get his own indirect damage in, right? Get the damage in that is quote unquote free. Doesn't cost him anything. Yeah, actually these lizards surviving pretty well, but still, I mean, like in that swell of mice, you know, 2 lizards died. But hey man, that's 40 food. And that adds up after a while. But now Horus is actually starting to get there, man. I don't know, 7 balloons is a lot. And Draz does not have a starvation farm. Well, he does. I guess he's got this one. But this can definitely go to starvation. This is becoming a very long game here. And there's not really an end in sight. You know, neither player... We're in a bit of a stalemate Cold War situation, where neither player can really effectively go in and attack the other. And now that Horus did weasel out a good economy here, yeah, there's board number 2, continuing to bring up the economy here. And Draz is being pretty smart with these snakes, just looking, trying to find any spot. You know, maybe if I go this angle, I can get some shots in on that balloon without losing a snake. He did it successfully the first time. Second time he goes in there and got blapped down by several balloons. Welcome to balloon hell. I know, man. This is what can happen sometimes. And now Draz is in a little bit of a weird situation, where he's the one who's got to figure out a way to end this game. Where, really, when you look at these decks, you kind of feel like it's the other way around. I mean, maybe these balloons are a little bit too spread out, and Draz can come in from like a perpendicular angle. Well, I guess parallel in this position. Perpendicular would be coming straight in. So yeah, like maybe you try to come in and attack like that, so you're only dealing with a couple balloons at once. But Draz is actually selling off his own balloons here. I think Draz is like desperately trying to figure out what is the right move. You know, what do I spend the rest of my money on? And decides on the snakes. Now, keeping all these lizards from Horus actually might end up being really smart, as much as I've been kind of dogging on him for it. Because imagine the scenario where, alright, the boars kind of lead, right? And deals with the mice. And then now you've got all these snakes. Well, you've got like 30 lizards to deal with the snakes. I think as long as Horus is very careful about how he engages and doesn't let the lizards collide with the mice. Yeah, you can see he's trying to pull the lizards back. Let the boar deal with these mice for free. And this is what I meant by the double boar, right? Like, now it doesn't really matter how much mice you have, because these boar can just mow them down. The trick is not losing the auxiliary units in the process, not losing the lizards. You got to keep the lizards back. Really, I think Horus should keep his whole army back here and just be microing the boars up front. But maybe he's keeping them a bit together so these snakes can't get a little too fresh. And maybe, oh, Draz started stepping up, maybe thinking about going for it. Draz is now starving, does have that starvation farm over to the side. It's not going to last the quite full 5 minutes, but will last a decent amount of time. And Horus is going to engage in. All these lizards are dropping down. 13 stacks of poison. All the board, one of the boards goes down. The other one might live. Still got the fox left, but just so many snakes here. That boar is going to go down. Horus realizes it and tries to get that explosion. The Draz is slowly starting to deplete the balloons. And oh my god, he's got to sell something. Okay, so prevents the starvation. But he's got no economy, but more importantly, he's got no avenue to rebuild the economy. However, Horus is slowly deteriorating here and can't quite deal with these constant waves of mice. Like, he doesn't have the double boar anymore and realizes he needs to build another one. I think he needs to sell off the third boar warren. Probably sell the fox, too. Yeah, really can't let these lizards engage with the mice. That's the problem. And Draz is going to come in and get some of the damage done. But Horus needs to find a way to build some more farms, right? Like, I think that's maybe how he wins, but it looks like Draz, with his guerrilla force here, his leftover commando. It's hard to call that a leftover army, I guess. But he's got no more income, you know? But this comp is just so cost-effective. This wolf snake owl. And it's slowly draining Horus down. The big archon of Horus's army here is definitely this boar. Keeping Horus in the game. But yeah, the fox goes down, and I think this is slowly going to become a victory for Draz here. Putting Draz comfortably in round 3 of the event with a 2-0 lead. What a hell of a match. It was fun theory crafting, and I think Horus played really well. Both sides played really well. It's always easy to be the armchair quarterback, you know, where we're looking at the game from outside of it, and we're like, oh yeah, you can do this, this, and that. But, you know, it can be a lot easier said